and welcome to How Not to Screw Up Your Kids, the bucket emptying episodes. I'm your host, Dr. Mary Han, psychologist, parenting expert, and today we are talking top hacks. And we're talking top hacks really with a snotty, not feeling very well Mary Han, who is trying to be like supremely okay, but actually I'm pretty snotty. You needed to know that, maybe you didn't. Oversharing, possibly. Anyway, that's me. The whole purpose of these sort of bucket emptying episodes is to look at how I can help empty your bucket. And sometimes that is I can help empty your bucket by talking through a question that you've got about a particular challenge that you've got that's happening within your family that is causing a real stress. And sometimes it can be that I can give you a bit of a hack, something that I know is going to be really helpful in emptying your bucket on a regular basis. And sometimes that could be making sure that your bucket doesn't fill up over the week, or it can be something that is very specific to the day. So for this episode, the hack that I want to share with you is the Sunday planning meeting. If you've been a follower of me for a while, you'll know I talk about this a lot, and I am very passionate about this. And it may be that you don't choose to do it on a Sunday. I've always just done it on a Sunday, but you can choose to do it on any other day. And in essence, the planning meeting is not about having a minuted agenda where the children are pulled in and are asked to account for themselves. It's not that, but it's really scheduling something in your diary on a regular day each week at a regular time. And it might be that you attach it to just before you have your evening meal, just after your evening meal, before a movie, or whatever it is that you do. But it's really being conscious about and deliberate and intentional about checking in as a family. Days turn into weeks, turn into months. 3 months have gone, 6 months have gone, 18 months have gone, 2 years have gone. And my view is that if we want to be really intentional with our parenting and we want to make sure that we are doing the best that we can each time, then the best way to avoid getting caught up in autopilot, doing the same thing again, what's the definition of madness? Doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result. So what you do with a Sunday planning meeting, this intentional catch up, is it's a planned opportunity for you and your family to reconnect. How's this week gone? What's worked? What hasn't worked? What's coming up in the week ahead? What might we need support in? What might we need to talk about? Is there some problem solving that needs to take place? And that really is broadly its intention. So it's really the kind of reflecting piece is just about just connecting, just making sure that everyone's okay. And if you've had a particularly problematic week, maybe you felt that you've worked quite a bit, so you've not been around a lot. Maybe you've been around a huge amount and you know that the following week you're not going to be around a lot. Maybe one of your children's had a particularly emotional week and they've been really struggling with friendships, or maybe you've got a child that's been really struggling with their sleep at night. Maybe you and your partner have been at loggerheads as to how to deal with your child that is struggling to fall asleep at night. So if we schedule these times to be intentional, to have those conversations, then it forces us not to let the days and the weeks and the months go by and we do nothing, which is potentially sometimes even more damaging, is that one parent does things one way, another parent does things another way, and we're inconsistent and our children get mixed messages. So let me just give you a sort of a guidance of how might you introduce this to your partner. So maybe you think, actually, Mary Han, I've been thinking about doing this Sunday planning meeting for ages, but I'm not convinced that I'm going to be able to convince my partner. And we had this specifically in the membership, and I remember this particular mum, so it was a mum trying to convince her husband to do this, and she came back and afterwards said it's really interesting how he'd been really resistant to the planning meeting, and then she was due to be away for a week, and suddenly he was like, I really think we need to have a planning meeting. So it's a drip, but in essence, if we've got a partner who isn't quite on board or doesn't really understand the need, it's just simply saying, it's a chance for you and I to check in on how things are going. Maybe just touch base about what might be happening with each of the children, and if there's anything that we need to be aware of, things that are coming up, maybe disagreements that we might have had about how to parent. But it's that opportunity to connect with each other so that you can then review what's been going on. The beautiful thing about it is that it avoids resentments building up. Because if you're feeling resentful, that you feel that you're dealing with a particular situation the right way, and you perceive that your partner is dealing with it in a different way. Maybe you are feeling resentful because you always seem to be the one that is unloading the dishwasher, or maybe you feel resentful that you feel that you're always the one that's organising childcare. Whatever that might be, if we have an agreed intentional time that we check in with our partner, then what that does is it allows us that space and that knowledge in advance that at this time, roughly, it doesn't have to be like military precision, but at this time on this day, we're going to catch up and we're going to have a conversation around what's been happening, and I'm going to feel that I've got a space in which to communicate that to you and how it's made me feel. So if you've got a partner that's resistant, it may well be simply a case of, look, why don't we just try it? Let's just see how it is. I think it's a really great way for us to just check in. You know, our children are always doing different things at different times, and quite often we don't always get that chance to be all together. So that's how we can approach it from that kind of slightly resistant partner. And I do think that if you're listening to this and you've got very young children, so maybe you've got an 18-month-old, a 6-month-old, a 2-year-old, still have these meetings, because where you set the intention and you do this regularly with your partner, it's really helpful at those early stages, in those early months, and when our children are still younger. You're connecting with each other about how are you finding this parenting, and you know, the difficulty. Are you finding it's difficult with feeding or sleeping, and how can we just look at it in a slightly different way? You've given yourself that space and that opportunity to have those discussions, and then as your children get older, they can then be part of that meeting. So that's the kind of context in terms of our partners, and also in terms of how we then introduce that when we've got very young children. What we then want to do is, if we've got children who are older, 5, 6, 4, 7 and above, it's a great chance for us to come together and just have a reflective moment. So it's not necessarily about asking them to kind of break down, well, how was your school week this week? How was your homework? How was your exams? It's just simply a case of, how was it? How have you felt? You can use emojis. You can ask them for scores out of 10. How much fun did you have this week? How much creativity did you have? What worked? Give me one thing that you thought was brilliant this week. Give me one thing that you think was rubbish. However you want to position it, it's a really great way of getting some feedback from your children, bringing your family together. And what it also does is, if you have noticed some specific challenges around bedtime, about sibling dynamics, about doing work, about doing what you're asked, getting ready for school, whatever it might be, you've got a framework, you've got a format, you've got an opportunity where you can say, from my perspective, what I've noticed that mornings and getting ready to go out in the mornings have actually become quite disorganized, and I've noticed that I found myself shouting quite a bit to get everybody ready, and I know that makes me feel really horrible afterwards, so goodness knows how it makes you feel. So I thought actually this might be a really great chance for us to have a discussion about what could we do to make mornings feel less stressful, because I can't imagine anyone enjoys the way the mornings are at the moment. So you've given yourself an open opportunity to have those discussions. What do you think? How do you think we should do it? We know we've got to leave at this time. We always seem to be leaving at that time. What do you think are the common problems? What am I doing that's not helping? What do you think you could do to make it easier? So it becomes this kind of two-way dialogue. And then when you're doing them regularly, you're then checking in. So guys, we set up a new routine, didn't we, in the mornings? I thought it's been going really well. And I've noticed I haven't shouted at all this week. How's it felt for you? What do you think? Do we need to make any tweaks? Do we need to refine it in any way? Oh, we're happy with it. Great. It's part of this kind of culture of this amazing, organization that you have within your family, and you're empowering your children, you're building resilience, you're building problem solving, you're creating this dynamic of we're all working together, and we're building those foundations of valuing honesty, trustworthiness, and sort of that whole family unit. So give it a try. To help you with it, we're going to share my Sunday planning meeting template. Please just use it as a template. Play around with it, change it if you want to. Sometimes it's easier to actually look at something that someone else has done and then tweak it the way that you need it. So as usual, you would head over to drmaryhan.com/library, where you'll find a link to be able to just share your email address, and then you'll be given instant access to the family planning meeting template, but all the other free resources across all my other podcast episodes. As ever, if you have liked, loved and enjoyed this episode, I would be ever so eternally grateful if you could rate, review and follow this podcast. so that others can find us and we can spread the love. So until next time.